What's up, everybody? It's the Roundtable Sports Podcast. My name is Taylor McLean, coming to you here on a Friday. A little later than I like to get off a second podcast, but just how the week played itself out. Watched nearly every game at this point. Still have a couple that I haven't unleashed yet. I still haven't gotten to the Seahawks and Falcons yet. But I've watched pretty much everything else. I still probably need to watch the Rams and Cardinals some more. But other than that, I've made the rounds here. And I had some thoughts on the games. Plus, you know what? I watched Thursday night over again in addition to watching it on Thursday night. So I've got some thoughts there. And I thought that would be where we would start. We were treated to another solid matchup last night with the Bengals and the Dolphins. Both franchises had come on some tough times, and both got their quarterback with Joe Burrow and Tua in the same draft. So it's an interesting matchup on top of being two teams that I think have a chance to make the playoffs and even possibly win their respective divisions, even though I don't know that the Dolphins would beat the Bills 9 times out of 10, but they definitely beat them last week, and they definitely frustrated Josh Allen at times. We should probably talk about that game as well. That is one of the other games that I watched since the beginning of this week, and actually spent a good bit of time on that game as well. So maybe we'll fold that into Dolphins talk. But last night was certainly interesting and certainly tightly contested. Even with the Tua injury coming in the second quarter, the Dolphins managed to keep this game tight throughout and only gave up a touchdown really late to put it out of reach. The Dolphins have been surprisingly stout on defense. I wasn't expecting for their front to be able to give Josh and then Joe Burrow and especially the Bengals running game so much trouble. It's not that I expected them to be bad necessarily. It's just they have really put things together since last year. Plus, they got Byron Jones back, and they have really strong corners. Xavier Howard got roasted for a couple of big plays, but still he got roasted on a couple of big plays by some of the best receivers that are in the NFL in T. Higgins and Jamar Chase. And Jamar had some trouble getting going from a fantasy perspective, but it was because he was receiving a ton of coverage. The Dolphins at times would roll their safety over the top of him and then have Byron Jones on him as well. And that would be the focus of the safeties, would be where Jamar Chase is. And that allowed T. Higgins to get loose on a couple of occasions, including what I think was the biggest play of the game with that huge reception going down the sideline and then casually kind of jogging in at the end. It's going to be a highlight play that I make a video of, no doubt. And certainly what you want in your wide receiver too. For the Bengals, they're not having to pay Joe, T. Higgins, or Jamar Chase at this point. So that's why their window is so much more open than it would be a couple of years from now when you're having to pay these guys really high salaries because they're all really top notch. And then you've got Tyler Boyd on top of that, who is a really good third wide receiver and would be a lot of people's number 2, or hell, if he was on Chicago, he'd be Chicago's number 1 receiver by a long shot. So to have all 3 of them out on the field at one time, and then Joe Burrow, the ultimate decision maker out there distributing the ball, that's a situation for success. And I think that people may underrate T. Higgins because Jamar Chase broke out in such a big way, but that would be a mistake. His size and speed combo really makes him a problem for defensive backs to deal with. There's fewer and fewer big defensive backs that are able to deal with guys like that. So the fact that he's able to go up and get it on a guy like Xavier Howard or really just on cornerbacks in general is impressive. And you can see that when he gets the ball, he's a problem for defensive backs to bring down too, because he's really strong. And you can see that size does play on his behalf out there when they're trying to bring him down. So they're well aware that not only can he go over the top of them, but he can roll over them as well. So having him on the other side of Jamar Chase means everything because you kind of have to pick your poison one way or another. And that's something that the Dolphins are setting up as well. When you've got Jalen Waddle and Tyreek, if you roll coverage one way or another, you're just picking your poison. Okay, you're going to cover up Jalen. Well, we're going to go to Tyreek. Okay, you're going to cover up Jamar. We're going to go to T. Higgins. It works both ways. And really, you want to set up an offense in the NFL where whatever the defense tries and take away, you can go in and do those other things that strategy leaves open. So if they're going to sell out stopping the run, which they didn't really sell out, they just stopped the run a good deal. And really, it felt like Joe Mixon was running into brick walls all night. He did have a nice touchdown where he was able to push that pile into the end zone to start off the game. But other than that, he didn't really get anything extra on this night, which is a kudos to the Dolphins defense. And the Dolphins defense is no punk. And then the Dolphins offense is no punk either, especially when Tua's out there, which we'll get to. But I wanted to finish with the Bengals here. I think if someone is worried about Jamar Chase or Joe Mixon as far as their volume or their scoring goes, I think that'd be something to attack as far as your fantasy football leagues go. I doubt that anybody is willing to sell low, but if you can slip Jamar into an offer, maybe they're a little bit down on what they've received so far. There's going to be some bigger games here, and he was able to get going a little bit late. It's just this is how the pendulum swings. It's like when Justin Jefferson had a huge game to start the year. And same thing with AJ Brown. You know, that you get the coverage shifted to you, and then it's up to the rest of the offense to push them off of that coverage. And that's what T. Higgins and the rest of the offense did. And that's what T. Higgins and Hayden Hurst, even though his touchdown was kind of late and fluky, that's what you need from your tight ends that are that late. Maybe you have him in best ball or whatever it is, but he looks explosive and he looks like a good addition. Although I think that they had a little bit more trust for their previous tight end. We'll see how Hayden gets mixed in going forward. I don't think that's something I'd be approaching as far as his fantasy value, but just for the overall offense itself, it's good to have him as a part of all of it. Well, it still doesn't seem like it's a top flight passing unit. It did seem like they were a little bit more in sync than they had been in the previous weeks because they'd been kind of getting eaten up in those previous weeks, especially by the Cowboys. It does take offensive lines time to gel. It is kind of more of a group unit, especially when it comes to pass protection and knowing who's got who. And that can take a little time. So they may end up getting better on that end. That is definitely the hope for the Bengals to reach their ultimate upside and truly be the Super Bowl contender that they can be. Is can this line gel to the point where they're giving Joe longer and longer times to throw and they can start unleashing the longer gains? Because T, Jamar, and even Tyler Boyd are really capable of taking advantage of that. And then Zach Taylor is pretty good at setting up routes and setting up ways to get his guys open. So throw all that together, and I just have high hopes for the Bengals, and I hope that they're able to adjust when it comes time to adjust because they've done so far. But that's the test of a Super Bowl team, and we'll see if they can kind of keep that up. On the Dolphins side, obviously, the injury to Tua Tagovailoa was pretty scary. It didn't look like the worst slam I've ever seen from like a pulling a guy down or like a tackling standpoint. I mean, quarterbacks seemingly take harder hits than that all the time, but seems like the way that he fell and that he hit his head really had neurological repercussions, and they were super worried about his neck and about his head from the hit. It was kind of a sombering moment in the game when it happened, obviously, and seeing when they came back from commercial that the whole team was out on the field and he was getting put on the cart was especially I hate to say sombering again, but it was put everything in perspective. And I think it's a sign of mortality when they see a guy, whether it's their teammate or not, go down like that. And it's especially tough for the Dolphins when they had such a promising start to the season overall and were in this game and definitely would have had a chance to win had Tua stuck around. I firmly believe that because they were in it till nearly the whole game. I mean, it was certainly the Bengals pulled away a little bit, but the Dolphins were game throughout, even when Tua got hurt. So you have to think he would have had an effect on that. Obviously, not the focus because it's really his health and him being okay. It was hard not to see his hands, and they were so flexed that you worried that he had broken his hands. It looked so messed up that they were completely flexed out. And like the broadcast said, that's a neurological thing where apparently he hit right on the right spot to really jolt him and really not turn out his lights exactly, but kind of shock his neurological lights. The system was firing on all cylinders because you could see just the hands were all super flexed out. And my friends were like, he broke his hands. I was like, no, he's convulsing. And I thought maybe it was his back. I kind of still think it was his back in the hit in the third game. I mean, they've come out and said it wasn't a concussion in the third game. And I kind of believe him because it didn't look like he hit all that hard there either. And back, neck, head, that's all connected in there too. So where he hit could affect all of that. And it's probably hard to say on their end exactly where it is too, because we don't know all that super much about the brain as much as we know. I'm guessing that it puts him out next week, at least, maybe two. They haven't come out and said anything to that nature. I don't have any inside information. I would just guess that he misses a little time after this, but who knows? It definitely, everything they've said so far has been good news. There's no problem with his neck at this point. He seems fine. He was able to go home, so he didn't get stuck in Cincinnati. So he's able to fly on the plane. They don't always let you do that if you're not in pretty good shape. So we'll see what they come out with as far as the time frames going forward. But it was pretty scary, and I just didn't think it was that much until you see his reaction. And obviously, getting hit by humongous men is a big problem for anyone. And with Tua's frame, that is a big issue. The big Bo Jackson style injury was one thing, but he still, has been taking some hits, and those hits have taken him out a bit. He's not super quick like Kyler, where Kyler's pretty slight, but Kyler's also like an Aikido master. He's not going to let you get a clean hit on him most times, and he's going to be able to escape you a lot of the time too with his extreme agility and his extreme speed, especially the acceleration. While I like to have more athleticism than who he should aspire to be, Drew Brees, he's not getting away from a lot of guys either. I like how fluidly he has been moving, but it's still a problem overall that he has the body frame he has and has taken some hits and he hasn't been able to withstand them at times. Not that it's his fault, it just is what it is. I'm not a big Teddy Two Gloves guy. I'm not a big Teddy Bridgewater fan. As a starter, as a backup, he's pretty elite as far as backups go. Still, that doesn't make him Tua Tagovailoa, but he is kind of an off-brand version of him. He just doesn't have the same ability to go deep that Tua does. Tua doesn't have the top end arm strength, but it's way more functional than what Teddy Bridgewater has, which is a overall problem for this offense when one of your big overall tactical advantages is being able to hit Tyreek and Jalen Waddle deep. And that certainly will help his ability to go deep, but those type of plays are a lot of times, the percentages are 50-50, and Teddy and his arm strength and just his overall situation kind of bring that down a couple of notches from what Tua can bring. And then he's just not the same level of accurate that Tua is for the short run after the catch stuff. The good news is Mike McDaniel has looked good as far as his play calling goes and as far as what he's been able to bring schematically. And teams are going to get more and more film on him, and it's going to be about his and the Dolphins' abilities to adjust once a really solid game plan comes up on them. But until then, and even then, I just like his ability to get guys into space and to have things moving in a really modern way for an offense. And then, of course, you have the two explosive weapons in Tua and Jalen Waddle. It's obviously a downgrade for them for fantasy purposes because Tua is able to deliver the ball on time and with such accuracy in their intermediate term. And then he's going to outshine Teddy a bit in his deep ball accuracy and just his overall deep ball as well. But if anybody's able to do a pretty reasonable facsimile of it, it should be Teddy Bridgewater, and that should put the Dolphins in a better position to succeed while they may have to operate without Tua. The good news is it isn't a murderer's row part of their schedule. The New York Jets have shown some competency for sure, but they're still not one of the top end teams that will be at the Jets. And then at home versus the Vikings and at home versus the Steelers. While those are tougher than the Jets matchup, I would estimate, it's still not a murderer's row. Those are games that I would think are winnable if things go your way. So hopefully Tua's okay. I'm not going so far as to say somebody should be fired over the Tua injury, and this is a huge thing. Okay, yeah, they're definitely going to be taking a look at this, and I don't know. Maybe there was a concussion in the third week. I just didn't think so. I don't think they thought so, and I think that this is partially, it's all connected. It's back, head, all of that. I'm just speculating, but it doesn't feel like it's one of those things. I also watched the Buffalo side of that Buffalo Dolphins game, and it just felt, just to kind of unload the note bag here of things that I felt while I watched these games. It just felt like Josh was just a little bit off. There's a lot of passes that he would make, including most of the time, nearly all of the time, and it just felt like he was kind of out of gas a little bit. Apparently, it was really hot in Miami during that game, and that's what he's come out and said as well. And that's what the film kind of looks like when you watch it. He's just not making those little bitty plays. The ball skips or doesn't quite make it, or it's not quite on time, and the play doesn't get made because of it. And it just felt like little paper cuts like that going one way, and then Tua, when he's right and when the Dolphins are running right, they paper cut you with all those short passes and work your defense horizontally as much as any team that does it. So as I said earlier, I don't know that Buffalo is going to lose that game when they outgained the Dolphins so thoroughly. And even with Josh being a little off, it still felt like in the moment that they should have been winning that game big time. Obviously, you have to make a bunch of mistakes, and that happened for sure. But it's just a very unlike Josh game that I saw. And I think that 9 times out of 10, he makes those plays. I just think he was a little gassed by the heat, and it definitely got to him. And Miami was a little bit better in shape for that, obviously, because they deal with that all the time versus what I'm guessing isn't quite as harsh as summer in Buffalo. And that's not the whole thing, but it did play out that way on film. Like you could see that Josh was just a little bit off, and then they were also really insistent on trying to get that running game going, and it wasn't really going anywhere. And they need to be more balanced when that's what teams give you, but it seems like it's been to their detriment to get started, but they're committed to it, and they should try and continue to get more out of it. But it is something that they're dealing with in the front of the season. That's a big part of what happened here. The other thing was I didn't like their protection schemes all the time. It felt like Miami was able to crowd the line of scrimmage and get some free rushers out of it. Like the rest of the guys would bail out, and 2 of the guys on the end would go, and they didn't really have a good answer for that. And luckily, Josh was able to avoid some of those guys, but he wasn't always able to avoid it. And it just gave me some concern overall when I saw that they were able to do that to Buffalo. I still think Josh is great, and I think this is an outlier game for him. I don't think we're going to be playing in very many hot games when it comes time for the Super Bowl, but that is something to keep an eye on going forward. I guess if you're betting or whatever, is how does Josh respond to these hot games? Because the errors were so unlike him. It was so anti-Josh when he always makes that right throw out of the backfield. It just to see him not make those plays was kind of startling for sure. He'll get over it. They're a good team, and their defense isn't a good matchup for Tua. And Miami isn't really a good matchup for them either because they get the ball out of Tua's hands and work the short game really well as the long game. So they're a hard cover for a team that's really more just for like a Patrick Mahomes. They're really really set up to beat Patrick right now versus beating Tua, who uh, has different strengths. I mean, it's just a different ball game overall. Another game that I watched that left me a little concerned overall was the Kansas City Chiefs versus the Indianapolis Colts. Quick takeaways from the Colts. They still haven't gelled as an offense overall, which isn't surprising with Michael Pittman and not a ton else as far as super reliable or plus plus weapons. Obviously, Jonathan Taylor in the running game is supposed to be the plus plus weapon and the emphasis of the offense. They haven't gotten that going as much as they would like, even though Jonathan seems to be fine. And I think it's because they just don't threaten you as much down the field as they probably should be able to. Whether that's a Matt Ryan thing going forward, we'll have to see. Whether they need to gel more and figure out what they're good at. That's part of the first part of this season. So I'm reserving judgment on all that. And then not having Michael Pittman at full strength is a big hurt when the offense is structured the way it is and the personnel is structured the way it is. So I'm reserving judgment on the Indianapolis Colts side, and they did win this game. They won it through stout defense overall, too. The Chiefs are bound and determined to develop their running game, and it seemed like they were running into a brick wall a lot of the time. And it seems like the Colts are going to be, still pretty stiff up the middle. So the bare bones is there for the Indianapolis Colts on what they've been trying to accomplish and the like. I'm a little bit down that they haven't really been able to have a game breaker day on offense yet. Does concern me a bit overall. So not a ton of takeaways, but hey, they won the game and got off the schneid a little bit. They seem to have had one of the slower starts for teams that I think we all had some expectations for at the least. I think there was some thought, at least on my part, that Matt Ryan would provide some stability on third down and the like, but it also seems like teams haven't had to back off quite as much because Matt Ryan also doesn't have the same arm strength and the same abilities to hit you down the field that Carson Wentz does. So there's a give and a take there that they haven't quite worked out yet on the Indianapolis Colts side that I'm interested to see if they can work out. I'll be way more concerned if it happens again versus Tennessee. I don't think that Tennessee is a huge fall off from the Chiefs, or probably right around the same talent level, but still, I'll be watching that one closely to see how the offense looks. On the Chiefs side, I was a little concerned that the offense doesn't look a little bit more explosive than it did. I had higher expectations for what they had put around Patrick. I thought that they had solved some of the problems that they had caused when they traded Tyreek Hill with bringing in Valdez Scantling and Sky Moore and Juju Smith-Schuster, and it just hasn't been that kind of one-to-one production replacement. And it seems like they still need a little time to get the rapport and to get everything moving in a correct direction. It hasn't been as smooth, and it hasn't seemed like everything is, from a schematic point, is right in line with what they've been doing up until now. I think that is partially by design, in that they know that they need to be able to spread the wings in the running game so that when teams force them to do so, they can actually run the ball. It just hasn't been that easy, and the line hasn't been quite as good as I would have hoped. I mean, with the names that are on the line and the money and resources that they put into it, I would want to get a little bit more out of that and out of that running game for sure. So I think there's a couple of these teams, and I think the Bills and I think the Chiefs are two of those teams that are forcing some things in an effort to run things the way that they want to try and reach their ultimate upside. And in the end, they just may not have the ability to do so. but I'm reserving judgment. This is all early season stuff, and teams are playing less and less in the preseason than they used to. And this played out last year where there were some things that happened in the first 4 weeks that didn't happen the rest of the season. So you have to be mindful of that. And I'm just trying to watch these games with an open mind to what these teams could be. And I still have I'm still reserving judgments on the Chiefs, but it was curious that they lost this game. A game that I feel like if a couple of things go the other way, that they win 9 times out of 10. So I'm not super worried, but it is, something you want to look at. You don't want to just totally flush it down the toilet here just because it's unexpected. Other game that was unexpected was the Jacksonville Jaguars versus the Los Angeles Chargers. Jacksonville has been hurting some survivor pool contestants recently with their wins. They were obviously pretty good money on that last year, and were able to be ridden nearly all the way to the championship with a survivor pool. But this is a different team with a different coaching staff and a second year quarterback that looks like he is a lot more comfortable in this offense and on the field, period. Obviously, this game raised a bunch of eyebrows with it being the Jacksonville Jaguars and everyone loving the Chargers so much. And with good reason. I love Justin Herbert. He is one of the four quarterbacks that I love, with Joe Burrow, Patrick Mahomes, and Josh Allen being the four. Probably Tom Brady too being five, just because he gets a GOAT exemption. And I love Matt. I love other quarterbacks, Stafford, etc. But these are the guys that are the future of the NFL that I would want to have, that I would trade Dak and 3 first-round picks for immediately if given the chance. So I can see why people are all over Herbert. Herbert was hurt. And in the same way that the Heat took Josh and made him just a little bit off, and when you are focused on deep passing and when that's a huge part of your game, just a little bit off means the world. By the way, I forgot to mention Gabriel Davis definitely dropped a Josh touchdown pass. So it wasn't just Josh that was struggling out there earlier, just to be clear. But like I said, Justin had, the rib cartilage thing that he was dealing with, and it made him just a little bit off as well. Just throws that I expect him to make that just weren't quite on the money. The thing is, he still made some big throws and he was still ripping the ball like he's Justin Herbert. Maybe it was only going 95 instead of 99, maybe, but it still seemed like it was him. It was just, a throw here, a being just a little bit off there, and maybe not having his full range of motion was kind of the difference here. And to the Jaguars' credit, they are improved on defense as well. They're not just improved on offense. Like, it just, having that turd hanging over a team being Urban Meyer, and apparently his attitude towards running the team and possibly life really does make a difference for a team, and just brings everything down, not just from a schematic level. That's a big part of it, but just the overall mood and overall want to of a team is affected. And I know these NFL players are putting out film that's going to affect them. And I know they're getting paid to play a game, so they should want to anyway. But there is a huge difference between playing for someone that you believe in versus playing someone that you hate and have no belief in. And that's when you hear words and phrases being thrown around like he's lost the locker room. And when you've lost the locker room, then it's time to go. And even when it's going to be a ton of money, which I don't know how much of that money Urban Meyer has actually seen. I kind of think he's probably suing at some point or on some level or something to try and get some of that. At least I would be, because it did seem a little tenuous, but it seemed like it was deserved at the same time. Like, I don't know. It seemed hard to give him 1 year when it's hard to give any coach 1 year. But if anybody deserved it, it was him. And now that he's not hanging over them and everybody seems to believe in Doug Peterson, seems like the whole team overall has had their spirits lifted. And you know what? Being in the game that you lost and then winning 2 other ones, especially one against the Chargers has to feel good. And they've got some pop in places. They still have some spots on the roster that they need to improve, no doubt. But since they've got their quarterback in tow with Trevor Lawrence, now they can be frisky and not worry about, screwing up their chance to get a quarterback. They know they have a guy they can build around, and now they're getting a chance to get a look at what his strengths actually are. So they're going to be able to, put guys that complement what he does well around him. And they've already started to do so with Christian Kirk and Zay Jones, adding him and Evan Ingram and being able to add Travis Etienne over the top of what they already had in Marvin Jones and James Robinson makes all the difference. And then you can totally tell that not only does he have more open passes to throw to, because schematically they're better on offense, and Doug Peterson has a plan on how to get guys open and what to do on offense. And then they've got better guys. They've got a ton more speed out there between Kirk and Zay Jones for sure. And then sure hands in their tight end. And then you have Marvin as well. That's going to help everything. Plus Etienne, I think Etienne is explosive. And I love the way he runs the ball back there. He just hasn't quite broken one loose yet. And then James Robinson has absolutely broken one loose and looks 10 times better than I ever would have expected coming off of injury. But most importantly, Trevor looks comfortable back there as well. That's the big thing, is the game definitely looks like it's slowed down for Trevor as far as his timing, not just on passes, but just the plays overall. He seems more on time and with it. He's throwing with more anticipation as well. So, and you put that together with the timing aspects of it and with the game kind of slowing down a bit. And it's just meant bigger throws, more throws that he just wasn't making last year. And he didn't have as many opportunities to make big throws last year because of the scheme. But even if he wouldn't have, he wasn't ready for a lot of the things he's doing now. And now he's able to do them, and he's gaining confidence with it as well. The team overall seems like they're more confident in him to be able to let it loose a little bit more. Not that he didn't put a lot on his shoulders last year, but it feels like he's ready for it now. And it feels like we're finally getting to see more and more flashes of the guy that I could see under the rubble last year. Sometimes, quarterbacks like a glass bottle when they're under the rubber there. Sometimes it breaks them into a million pieces, like Sam Darnold, who was under, horrible supporting cast rubble for too long, or Trevor Lawrence, where, it shows them the adversity, it humbles them, and it turns them into a sharp, killing instrument. And it seems like that's more what we're looking at. We've got a good test coming up with the Philadelphia Eagles. The Eagles have been playing really well. And I did watch their game. I'm kind of running late on time, but I have really liked the way the Eagles have been running. And you know what? We'll do a little short Eagles thing right here because it's quick. Not to gloss over Jacksonville. Sorry, Jacksonville, but I like the way you're playing. But it's going to be a good matchup coming up at Philadelphia. Philadelphia has a lot of what I was talking about with T. Higgins and Jamar Chase going on with A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. Devontae had a tough first game, but has since turned on the Jets since they've been rolling more coverage towards A.J. Brown. And especially in this last game, he was showing his ability to go up and get the ball. Jalen was trusting him to do so with good reason, because I just love the way he was playing, and he looked fast. He's a little bit more slight than you would like, so I'm worried about his health a bit. But it was an impressive game from Devontae Smith, and none of the Washington Commanders could go up and get the ball with him on that day. He was making all those different catches. His body control was incredible, and he looked fast too. That was the other thing, is they were having trouble keeping up with his speed. And when you can put all those things together, and hopefully he'll grow and become more and more physical as time goes on. But, it's not, you pretty much have to put your most physical guy on A.J. Brown, because A.J. is so big and fluid out there that if you don't have a big guy to put on him, then he's going to bully that cornerback all day. For Philly, it's a question of having both. You want to have both of them out there so You have to worry about Devontae. You can't put it all on AJ, and that opens up things for AJ. And then both those things open everything up for the running game and for Jalen Hurts, who I don't know if Jalen is still on my list of guys that I trust all the way. But you know what? He takes steps every year. And if he can continue to make the big plays on top of just continuing to refine all of the little stuff, I'm on board. Because the physical skills for there, it's always been reading the whole field and making the third and fourth read and keeping himself on the right tightrope of when to run and when not to run. And I don't know, he's built different. I don't know how many quarterbacks can lift with the offensive linemen. So I don't know. I don't bet against Jalen Hurts to figure it out. He's every step of the way from when he started in Alabama to now. He's gotten better. So I don't know. Turns out you put weapons around a quarterback and they look better. So I don't know. But big test. It's weird to say Jacksonville's a big test, but I want to see what they do against Jacksonville both ways. I'll be watching this game very intently. So not to shortchange the Eagles or the Commanders. The Commanders had a really hard time protecting Carson Wentz, who is already a ball holder trying to work the ball down the field. So definitely showed the Commanders to be vulnerable. And now they're about to play the Cowboys with the way they've been rushing the passer. So that should be interesting as well. Be watching that game, obviously, very intently. I'll be watching all the games. And my plan is to try and watch every NFL game throughout the season. Doesn't always happen that way, and we're still a little bit up behind since it's Friday and I have a couple more, but we're going to get there. Keep looking out for the videos. I'm trying to make some longer videos. I've been killing the shorts, and I've enjoyed making the shorts to kind of bring, some light to the podcast, but I got to put out these longer videos. So hopefully if you're listening now on YouTube, support, give it a like. If you are not, and you're listening on one of your other platforms, download the podcast, give it a review, give it a comment or a like. Let me know that you're here and listening and that you want to support. I have an exciting announcement. We haven't finished all the details yet, so hopefully we'll be able to announce that soon. But it's a big deal for the podcast and for me, so we'll have that coming up in the next couple of days, hopefully in this next week or so. So exciting times. I'm going to keep bringing you the content. Look for that. I've been making some college videos. NBA's coming up. I'm getting League Pass, so we'll be talking about that a little bit as well. Appreciate the time. If you've gotten to this point and haven't done so, like I said, give me a download. Otherwise, have a great rest of your day.